All right. So not as loud as I feared. Of course, I was only listening through one earphone. Um, the I wanted to talk about restraint tonight. So in so much of the literature of the Pali Canon, there are um, frequent reminders about that the Buddha praised restraint, and the arahants, the completely enlightened people praise restraint. And I want us to, here's an example from the Dhammapada. I think it's from the Dhammapada. Good is restraint over the eye. Good is restraint over the ear, over the nose, over the tongue. Good is restraint in the body. Good is restraint in speech and thought. Restraint everywhere is good. The monk restrained in every way is freed from all suffering. And it goes on and on, but that's the gist of it, right? That restraint is freedom from suffering. And one of the things that I sort of wanted to bring attention to is that I think first of all, our culture's relationship with the word restraint may be one thing, and even our culture's relationship with the word praise. When you read enough of these sutta statements, it becomes clear that it's not, when we talk about the Buddha praising restraint or the enlightened monks praising restraint, we're not talking about people praising in sort of the goody two shoes sense of that word, but more like you or I might praise the TV show Schitt's Creek, or someone else might praise whatever that show was that was so crazily popular a few years ago, The Walking Dead, or whatever, like that. The way that when you read this, is the way that the Buddha and his followers are speaking of restraint is like that. They're, you won't believe how good this is, right? And still it can be sort of hard for us to believe, particularly I think in the I think I had titled the talk earlier in the week as, what's freedom anyway, right? Because our relationship with restraint in our culture is so heavily conditioned by this idea that we should have, freedom to do whatever we want. And of course we do. But what is praiseworthy? What is worth saying, oh man, you were going to be so glad you did that? So I really got a very visceral reminder, actually, of what restraint can be like for the mind and heart when we had the opportunity here. So I live with my daughter and my 3-year-old granddaughter. That was I had moved to Oxford to be close to them anyway, and then during the pandemic, after the pandemic had been in full force for a while, I just moved in full force to be another pair of hands and such, and it's been fun. But we had the opportunity to babysit a real baby. Somebody had dislocated their shoulder and needed to go to the hospital. So we got to babysit a really new baby, and you just won't believe how giant a 3-year-old can look until you put him right beside a baby that is new. But I had forgotten about swaddling. It was like, oh yeah, I mean, it's just funny how fast you forget this stuff. But just the relief that the baby gets from having their arms pinned to their body in this little burrito style blanket. And of course, for those of us, if we are if we're over identifying in an inaccurate way with the baby, we're thinking, oh, that looks terrible for somebody to sort of pin our arms down with a blanket and all of that. But you have to remember that with an infant, the infant's trying to rest and has no control over all of this movement. And so they're constantly, even when they're sleepy, and in fact, the more sleepy they get, the more prone they are to having these reflexive movements happen that disturb them. And so for them to have somebody just sort of lovingly but firmly and tightly just wrap them up so that can't happen, it's such a relief, and they just drop off to sleep so fast. And I thought that all that I felt like I really understood what restraint was in the best sense of that word for the first time. That sense of, yes, maybe my arms and legs don't flail around, although sometimes we can sit down and there can be a sense of too much energy in the body, and that can be there too. But mostly for me and for many people I know, it's more these mental reflexes and these conditioned habits of emotion flailing around, not allowing us to rest, not allowing us to be at ease in our daily life, not allowing us to rest in our meditation. And for many people, not even allowing us to rest when we're trying to go to sleep at night. And if somebody could wrap up our thoughts and emotions the way somebody can wrap up a baby, then we could just, go right off to sleep. And of course, in some ways, that is what the practice of mindfulness is. It's we're deliberately restraining, we're choosing where to rest our mind and just saying, we're just going to stay right here. That's part of the practice of mindfulness. It's that concentration aspect of collecting the attention. The mindfulness is not so much the being still. The mindfulness is remembering, oh yeah, I meant to do that. Oh yeah, when a reflex carries us off, there's that, oh yeah, I don't have to do that. I can just stay right here. So it provides that swaddling, and I think that if we if we take a look at some of these suttas or some of these things, or listen to these talks by the monastics in which they're talking about restraint, it might be useful sometimes to think of it in terms of swaddling, in that sense of not so much that I'm, fighting with myself to, hinder my own freedom, but that I am swaddling myself in these practices to allow my mind and heart to come to rest, to come to stillness. And of course, it's not only the swaddling of, bringing our attention to rest in one place, but the swaddling that's provided when we practice the precepts, right? Um, when we can have a mosquito fly around us and not immediately feel like we have to kill it. That's actually not necessary. Unless we live in a place where the mosquitoes are, dangerously infected or something, then you have to make your own choices about that. But there's so many times that, we kill living beings just sort of reflexively, and that's not necessary. Um, and of course, the other precepts of not taking what isn't being freely given, not lying, not misusing our sexual energy, our sensual energy, and not intoxicating ourselves. And all of those, when we understand those, not in terms of restraints like handcuffs to keep us from enjoying our freedom, but as swaddling, then we come to recognize, oh yeah, there's a reason that the Buddha taught things like generosity and virtue before he even got around to teaching people to meditate, because that swaddling has to come in first so that you can relax and enjoy, and actually enjoy and take delight. That's another phrase that comes up a lot, right? That the Buddha's followers delight in restraint, delight in meditation, delight in practice. So again, it's that feeling um, of this is where it gets really good, and enjoyable. So just wanted to just throw that out there as a topic of reflection, and give people a chance to share anything you would like, on whatever may come up for you around that. I'll stop the recording in case you want to share anything personal.